so excited to be here. I love everybody on this panel. We're just gonna jump right in. Everybody feeling good? Everybody glad to be here?
Yep. Yes.
Great.
Had some tequila. We're good.
That's the spirit. It's 11:25. We're very close to noon. It's a Friday. It's a festival.
We are in Austin.
Exactly. That's you're in it.
No, is mine? Yeah, testing. And also, I was really nervous. This is my first panel since the pandemic, so.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, me too. The tequila helped.
I've just been inside for like 2 years now, so this will be raw for all of us, but we're going to have a good time. The first thing I wanted to honestly just start with was kind of talking about what I feel is a common misconception about what music supervisors do. I feel like there's so much that goes into your job, so much that goes into like the responsibilities and how much you work with the teams and how much you work to get everything that needs to be done. So to start with, I just kind of wanted to ask, Maggie, we'll start with you. How would you describe or define your position? Like when somebody just comes up and asks you, like, what do you do? What is a music supervisor? Like, what do you tell them?
I say I'm in charge of the soundtrack. And I mean, that's the easiest way to explain it. And then if I want to go down further, I'll say I pick and place, or I help to pick and place the songs you hear in TV shows and movies. And then when they say, oh, that sounds so cool, I say, it's not as cool as it sounds. and then I go further and say, that also means I'm in charge of all the musical rights and licensing, and it's a lot of paperwork, and it's a lot of work, and we deal with budgets and spreadsheets and a lot of people. That's where I start, and that's where I go, and it depends on if they want to know more or if they want me to shut up at that point.
Jen, is there like a common misconception that you run into about what people think that you do for like in that role, in that job, like after you tell them I'm a music supervisor? Do you feel like they get the wrong impression about anything in particular?
Yeah, they think that we sit around all day and listen to music and make cool playlists and just have really good taste. And, to piggyback off of Maggie, because I think sometimes we don't realize how much we do and what we're responsible for. We're one of the very few department heads, we're the heads of music, that are on from the script stage all the way to the final delivery of the final episode. So we're working alongside production with script changes. We have to look at every draft that comes out, because if there's something that's scripted in, somebody sings a line of a song, or there's a karaoke scene, or I think we've all had huge music moments, a band on screen. I mean, I don't know how many of you've dealt with that. They just don't show up to set and start playing a song live. It doesn't happen like that. Speaking from experience in the finale of Euphoria, there was a huge musical number, a marching band, a choir, a choreographer. Like, it was gigantic. And that was like a 6-week situation. So when people are like, oh, when people on Twitter, it's my favorite thing, like, I'd be really good at that job. I'm like, okay, so you get a script and your director says, I want a musical number in the finale.
Yeah, that seems.
And then I
easy.
just say, bye. Good luck.
Like, yeah, no problem. Everybody knows how to do that. Yeah. Liza, I mean, we've talked a little bit about this before, but when it comes to those kind of nitty-gritty aspects of the job, is there anything that you like try to highlight to people as a skill you'd want them to know before getting involved? Like if somebody reached out to you and was like, I think I would be good at this, and they mean it in the right way, they mean it in a good, I want to learn and do the gig. Is there anything you'd want to like try to warn them about or talk to them about in terms of what to expect, like what the bulk of the job might be or what the harder aspects of the job might be?
Test. Okay. The way I describe our job is like the music supervisor is sort of navigating the world of licensing for our filmmakers, and they don't really understand how song rights work, and so my job is to like help them get what they want and have their vision, just like a set designer would be creating designs, but they're in collaboration with the showrunner. Same with the music supervisor. It's not just up to us. It's like you're interviewing, quizzing your filmmakers and figuring out where they come from and what they what they're looking for, and then you try to help their vision come to life. And by having a deep connection with the licensing community and getting things done, whether it's getting the song they want at the right price or offering alts that are affordable, that's a huge part of it. But yeah, I mean, I wish I brought, okay, I have it on my phone, but this list of things that we have to do that you would never imagine. Like, I need Beyonce. Or, do you remember that list? It was like on somebody's Instagram. It was so funny. So
The low profile?
yes.
Probably. Yeah,
Yes. So
Oh,
funny.
that's so cute.
I might have it on my phone conveniently if, we'll see, but my phone's over there. But there's just like, yeah. Anyway.
There's a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot, and I think you also touched upon another common misconception that I always talk about is that we have creative control. We do not at all. We are option providers. I wish we had creative control.
Yeah,
But-
we lead the horse to water, but we can't,
We-
you know.
we
you
cannot
can't
select
make
for them.
Take your song or buy your song.
You can write pleading emails like explaining why this is the song you should select, and they'll still choose Queen. So
Well, that leads pretty well into my next question, which is how do you typically get on board a project? Like at this stage in your career, are you getting to kind of pick and choose a little bit who you work with and what scripts you work with? And if so, what are kind of the attributes or the qualities that you look for before you sign on? Like you're hoping that the producers are nice and cooperative and you know them or you've heard good things or you'll call around and ask, or you're just like, well, we've got a good sized budget, so I'll have a lot of room to play with, or it's just a new area of like music that you could explore or get into. Are there certain things that you guys try to seek out, like when you have
I
the
look for
choice?
women. I've
Great answer, yeah.
had a decade or more of working with mostly men, so when it's a woman-led project, I get very excited.
I don't necessarily look for women. For me, it's just a lot of relationships, and but also I'm looking. It's my mood in the moment. Like, do I have enough time? Am I, how busy is our slate at the moment? And what are the relationships I have? Like, I would hate to pass on something that is from somebody I know and have worked with and love, because those relationships are super, super important. And then just the material, if it's something cool. I mean, I love to be doing all different types of music in different eras, and really that's also, if somebody offers something that's completely different, like that's exciting.
I think it's the same. I mean, I think if it's somebody that I've worked with before, and I think the goal is to be their guy. So whatever projects they work on, you kind of come along for the ride. But the other thing is, I definitely look through Deadline and the trades to see what projects are coming out. So like for The Offer, when that was announced, I called Paramount in like 0.05 seconds because I love the show is about the making of The Godfather, and I grew up on The Godfather. It's everything to me. And so I kept hounding her, the head of Paramount, who's our friend, to get me a meeting. And then when I did, I was like, so my family will disown me if I don't get this job. So whatever I can do. But it has to be, I definitely, when there's something exciting that I want, my team and I, we have a Google list, a Google Doc of all projects that are coming up that we want to work with, showrunners that we want to work with, who our friends are.
I'm so impressed by that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's called wish list, and sometimes we get to cross stuff off, but sometimes it's like, oh, we really want this gig, and we talk, and it's like, oh, somebody else has it, so it's like, okay, like Kindred.
I'm excited about that
I'm
one.
so happy that you're doing it though. So
Yeah, that's an exciting one. Yeah, I will say women, but I do think relationships, like you guys both mentioned, like if I want to do everything with Noah Hawley, he's the one that gave me a chance at Duplass Brothers and Sam Esmail, who are all dudes. But also, it is about time, and I think it's nice. I think all three of us are at a point in our career that we can say no to stuff, which is a really nice place to be in. And I like to say no to assholes. That's
Nice
one.
people is number
Nice
one
people.
criteria. That
Yes,
is-
like
that
You're
is
going to
it.
live with these people for 9+ months.
and be told what to do by them, and it's a industry that you can get disrespected quite easily, and yeah, so it's nice to be in a position finally to be able to work with people you want to work with.
So kind of jumping off that a little bit, you don't have to name any names, and this isn't like a horror story competition or anything, but I was curious, when you're working with a showrunner, when you're working with a producer or writer, and they have their heart set on a song or a cue or anything that they just have to get in there, and it can't be done. Like, you've done the legwork, you've looked at all the options. How do you talk to them about it? Like, do you have kind of a methodology in your head? Like, do you have like kind of a common, like, I'm going to show up with all these alts, I'm going to show up with, like, I'm going to start with, maybe it could happen, but really try to focus on this. How do you kind of approach those difficult conversations?
I mean, I will say that I'm sure I do everything in my power. So when I say no, it's like I have stalked them. I have done, like, offered as much money as, like, you do everything. So it's rare that you get a no, really. And when you do get that no, I do deliver it with alts, or with ideas. And but it's you hate to disappoint someone who has their heart set on something. I hate it when it happens, but it doesn't happen very often.
I'll have them write a letter, because then if the
showrunner,
showrunner,
like,
if the
to the-
showrunner, the director writes a letter and then it's still a no,
It's not all on you.
it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that much to add, but yeah, sometimes it's really hard to tell them the news, and yeah, tell them the news with alternatives, but also sometimes you just have to, like, be a big girl and like tell them. It's like so painful, but you just have to rip off the Band-Aid.
I wanted to start getting into the closing credits, because that's part of the theme of what we're here to talk about today. To kind of start with, I guess, is there a typical, in your experience, is there kind of a typical way a closing credit song is chosen? Like, are most closing credit songs written into the script? Is that rarely written into the script? Or is it always just kind of a different journey depending on what you're doing?
It's a different journey each time, I think. I don't know. Sometimes it's written into the script. Sometimes it's, hey, nobody's going to watch the end credits because they're going to be forced to go to the next episode. So let's do, either nothing or score. It just depends on the network. I mean, you guys, what do you think? I feel like HBO might be the only one that still has, like, featured end credits. Is that it? Can you think of anybody else?
I know. I think people still try to do it. I think filmmakers and still try.
Filmmakers want to do
They
it.
want it, but we get minimized immediately. It's a waste of money. I always sort of argue against it. I do it on the grade. One of the shows.
Closing? Specifically, the closing is what they argue. Sorry. Just you're saying specifically they argue against the closing as being like a waste of money?
I argue against it. I say
you
it's a
argue
waste,
against it.
except for a show like The Great, which is it's it's kind of period, and so, like, their songs really aren't going to work in the storyline. So we end with sort of something that encapsulates the episode. But even then, I think the audience probably only gets 5 to 10 seconds of it. So I will say that end songs now, it's about the first. When I listen, it's about the first 5 to 10 seconds of a song. Yeah, and so that's the only similarity in how I search for a song for the end of an episode is how it starts.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of the streamers, we just will go with score, because again, it's like, Netflix, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, next episode. So, we'd rather spend money, but sometimes, with Euphoria and Atlanta, FX does end credits. Yeah. So, and those can kind of be anything. I mean, for the first episode of Euphoria, that had everything from, like, Harry Nielsen to Juvenile. There's a lot of songs in that episode, and we ended. Yeah, it was ridiculous. We just ended it with Cutting Crew, just because it was like, this is cool. but then sometimes it is more intentional to kind of wrap up. I think a lot of times we'll have songs created for the show, and sometimes it's hard to kind of necessarily find the spot for them, at least again in my experience with Euphoria. Sometimes it just doesn't, the song won't work anywhere else, but it's a beautiful song and we want to use it, so then we'll just put it in the end credits because that's just a nice way to kind of tie up the show, the episode.
Could you just explain really quick what you mean by featured credits? You said HBO was one of the few that still had featured end credits, like as an option.
It just means they give the time to the credits that the credits deserve. I hate that streamers do that. I mean, I feel like so many people work so hard on these programs, and no one gets to see the credits. And I also think it's a good time. I mean, the reason end credit songs have become so powerful, it's a time to process what you just experienced, and it's nice to have a little time to sit with what you just experienced. And I hate that they pull us out of it so quickly. So feature credits. So there's like HBO still will allow a longer crawl before they go into the next one.
Everyone should gather together to try to get rid of the skip credits button both at the start and at the end of episodes. It's just such a burden.
I think it's algorithm data shows. I don't know.
There are a lot of people, it feels like they're very used to watching the same show over and over again. So like if you're watching The Office for the zillionth time, it's like, well, I just need to get to the next one so that like the rhythm doesn't break. But
well, I
how
think
does
they're
that
so
apply
afraid that they're not going to go to the next episode. Like just like 10 seconds is going to make us not want to see what happens next. I don't.
It also
Not a lot of faith in us as filmmakers.
And it also bums me out, especially with something like Euphoria. A lot of the HBO shows, Station 11, at the end of a lot of episodes, they have kind of a behind-the-scenes like whole thing about what went into it, like trying to give you at least a little bit of information about how they made this really impressive episode. And if you just let it do the skip, it's gone, and that's a bummer as well. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to ask a little bit about budgets. I wasn't sure does it change how much a song costs based on where it's put in the episode, like where you use it in the episode? Like, do the closing credits cost more or less? And how does that tend to work out, I guess?
Yeah, that's the other thing about end credits is they cost more.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's different prices for different uses, different lengths, and visual vocal usually when it's tied to picture and it's married, like you can't really take it out or change the song after it's like somebody's singing along, then that costs more. What else, guys?
I think you cover. I mean, it also they price it depending on our budget. It's kind of like a sliding scale. So, I mean, maybe not for TV, but like for movies, depending on the budget of your movie, the songs will cost different.
That's interesting.
A lot of variation. There's no like black and white song. Like, what is this song? I think filmmakers expect you. How much does this song cost?
Yeah,
$120K every situation. Yeah.
I get like, here's 40 songs. How much do they all cost? I'm like,
Give me 2 weeks at least. Yeah.
Do you have an idea at this point? Like when there's a specific song or use that's okay, so you've got a general kind of
Based
where
on
it's
past.
gonna.
Yeah.
Well, it's again.
Or our community
experience.
too, like, hey, you've cleared this song for this show. How much did you pay for it? Like just bouncing it off of each other.
but it's based on the length of the use. Like it could have been 10 seconds in your show and 3 minutes in mine, totally different price.
Yeah.
When it comes to kind of where you want to use the songs, like I know Maggie, you mentioned how like sometimes the closing credits, depending on the project, it can just cost too much and be a bit of a waste. But do you try to prioritize certain episodes over other episodes? Like is a premiere closing credits song like a more important thing because it's the first time they've seen it, and you want to leave them on a certain feeling, on a high, on like a tone of the show, or is it just kind of more based on what the episode needs?
I think both. Definitely, it's mostly based on what an episode needs. But typically, you front load the first few episodes of a show, and then the back few episodes. So, like, especially in a new show, the pilot. I'm sure you guys have noticed the pilot will have like 20 songs, and then the rest of the season it'll have 3. That's because we blow our whole budget on the pilot. Yeah.
And that's something that's kind of encouraged in the industry because it's such an important episode. Like they need people to latch onto it right then.
It's instructed. It's not encouraged. It's instructed. Yeah.
Better word.
Again, no creative control.
That's a great question.
Well, with again, I don't want to try to like name names or out anything, but like, can you give an example of the high end of what this might cost, like of what a certain song might cost in terms of just like, you've seen it, you can't believe they paid for it, but they did. And again, you don't have to name shows, just maybe a price or a range.
Well, I think I'll say this to showrunners, if it's a recognizable song, it's going to be expensive. So when I'm on spotting sessions and a showrunner will be like, like I had a situation with Mr. Sandman. They're like, why is it so expensive? And I said, sing it. And they sang it without skipping a beat. It's like, that's why it's expensive. So, there's obviously the anomalies, but I think everybody, knows Lady Gaga's expensive. The Stones are crazy expensive. So I think that, and then there are some songs that you wouldn't think would be expensive, but they are. But that's, again, more of the, the experience we have. But, TV is obviously different from film on a price level, as Maggie mentioned. But, yeah.
Just that sometimes songs you wouldn't think they're so expensive, but like they have really, famous songwriters behind them. So it's not just about the artist; it's also about the writers who wrote the song.
Yeah.
I mean, it's their art. My least favorite thing is when you tell a price to a showrunner and they're like, why do they deserve that kind of money? And I'm just
that
like,
drives me crazy.
but I mean, a price tag for TV is mostly a range between like 5 and 100K.
Yeah.
I mean, I just recently paid close to $1 million for one song in one movie. So music is expensive.
And in TV, my new line that I would, 50 is the new 40.
Yeah.
Because 40,000 used to cover like most famous songs, but I don't know if it's because of COVID.
Yes,
or
it is. I feel like
But in the-
everything's more expensive these days.
Everything now, the prices are going up.
And our budgets are not.
Going down.
Oh, wait, how would COVID affect the price of a
They're trying to
song?
make up for 2 years.
They're
of-
just
less
trying to. They just have
production.
less money, so they want to make more money where they can.
Yeah.
I just
Oh, wow.
also think the publishers with some of these big songs, they can command it.
Yeah. There's so much content. They're going to get their song in something. Someone's going to pay. So.
Yeah, and if they want it bad enough, they'll pay for it. That's their stance.
And it's
But
true.
but it's hard. It's hard for us because we work with what we have. It's not like if we come in under budget, we get to pocket that money.
And we never come in under budget. That's
Never,
impossible.
never.
And they do say, if they really want it, they'll pay for it. But that's only if like the Netflix exec wants it. I mean, it's not if the
Right.
So.
Wow, that's very interesting. All right, so let's get into a few examples if we can. I wanted to talk, Maggie, a little bit about how the dropout ended. It ended with North American Scum closing its premiere, and as you kind of talked about, like there's a lot of music in that premiere. But what were the kind of conversations about using that song, and what went into? Is that a difficult one to get? Was that something that was very common? How did you feel about using that in the dropout?
I liked that ending. It wasn't my selection. I forget what I wanted. But it wasn't a hard song to clear. They're pricey as they should be. They demand a top dollar. But that show was fun to work on. Liz Merriweather, the creator, was obsessive to the point of we tried out so many songs for every spot. I honestly don't remember every song, that like was in contention. The ending, we ended with St. Vincent. I do remember the song that was in contention. The other ending was Kanye West's song Jail. And I remember I wrote her an email saying like, Kanye's in the news every day. He's super problematic. Like, do we want, like, we don't know what's going to happen from now until the show airs. Like, what could Kanye do? And a lot happens. But she didn't respond to that email. And then Kanye didn't clear. And, Elizabeth Holmes is very problematic. So in a way, they worked well together, so.
So, I mean, how often do you have to have those kind of conversations with your showrunners about kind of the reputations or, like, I mean, obviously Kanye's famous enough where a lot of people
Everyone
probably knows
I try to bring it up. If someone has any sort of problem in the news, I hate to license Dr. Luke's. I mean, I bring it up every time. I feel like it's our
me,
responsibility.
I don't pay as much attention to the news as I should, especially music news. But I find that my showrunners are way more aware of it than I am. Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I had a showrunner recently ask about a Chris Brown song, and I was like,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Dropout. I was like,
what about these? And she was and then she was like, oh, yes, okay, yeah, no, let's go with one of those.
But on the other hand, like there are certain artists that like I just won't pitch because of something I read.
yeah.
You know, and I probably shouldn't name names.
No, I'm not. Yeah, we don't.
And you can't catch everything. I mean, these days, like,
Yeah, but like, who's gonna license a Marilyn Manson song now?
No way.
You know,
Yeah.
like I'm not.
yeah, no way.
I kind of on a principle.
No.
I'd be like,
Yeah.
I can't.
But a lot like I feel sad because I loved Ryan Adams,
Yeah, yeah.
but you know now you kind of can't.
No. I mean, I sometimes can separate artist from art. Like with Michael Jackson, but maybe that's because I have nostalgia for him and I, listened to him for so long before. I don't know. It's hard.
And I unlike my Spotify playlists and stuff that I love to do, I don't really discriminate that much.
Well, it's different listening for pleasure just for yourself versus giving them money and presenting them a platform. I feel like that's a very different.
So I guess with those kind of conversations, it is helpful in the sense to be able to talk it out. Like you do have the other person there in the room to kind of have that conversation with. Are they generally receptive to hearing that? Is it like you just said, like everybody's going to have a personal preference and kind of just decide for themselves, or is it generally like if you bring up those things, people want to steer away from them?
It depends. It depends on the showrunner. It depends on their mood.
Yeah. Moods.
But I think at this point, it's like there's some shame involved. Like I feel like if you call it out, they can't be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I still want that rapist, like.
Because they'll also, they will also. The other thing too, it's kind of the power of social media too. They'll get dragged.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of steer in a different direction, I mean, not on purpose. We can talk about this as long as anybody wants, and we are going to have an audience Q&A, so if you have specific questions about any of these topics, throw them out there. But I did want to ask about when you're working on a project that is, I mean, The Great is a historical show, but obviously the music cues at the end are a little bit different. But when you're working with something that is going to try to be period appropriate with the music selections, is that something that's exciting? Like, is that something that you guys look forward to try to, and do you want to try to find stuff that isn't as familiar, or is it just, I mean, I'm sure a lot of pitches go to the bigger names that really define the era, but like with something like Gaslit, I love Gaslit. I think that show is so good. I felt like there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't necessarily familiar with. What was that kind of like for you when you went into the project?
I mean, if it were my show, I would like to go more obscure and capture the sound of the 70s, but go with stuff that no one's heard before. It depends on the showrunner, But luckily with Gaslit, the showrunner mostly wanted to do that, and also our budget didn't allow for anything else. So it was constantly trying to find more obscure gems. But I love a period piece because you have parameters, and I love discovering songs that I never knew existed and then introducing the audience to them. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, me too. And the other thing I was going to say, wait, I forgot, about, some shows are super rigorous about time period and location and stuff. Like, I feel like Narcos, we made it like by the book, Everything was explicitly within the time frame. But there's a lot of shows that take liberties with it, and it's a stylistic choice. It's just a choice that you make. I'm working on a show that takes place in 2007, but 2008 is kind of okay. But they are worried about Twitter and social media afterward, and then like when you can't afford all these big songs and you have to use library. Well, does that library come from 2007? Now that's a new challenge. So I don't know. I'm trying to find 2007 library, which is totally there, but anyway.
Do you notice that more? Like, do you feel like with social media, with just the way that people have access to shows these days, that they're paying much more attention to, things being accurate, quote unquote? Like, is that a
Yeah. Yeah, they're brutal. I try not, my team forwards me shit. I'm like, I don't want to see this. But we put a Wolf Parade song in the pilot of Dropout, the first, and it was, I think, set in 2004, or it was set in 2002, but the song came out in 2004. And we actually told production, we were like, the song is not, it's 2 years late or 2 years early. And they were like, we don't care. And then the freaking lead singer of Wolf Parade like called us out on it, and he was really pissed. And I was embarrassed because I was a huge fan of the band. But yeah, he was an asshole about it. I know.
When was the last time people talked about Wolf Parade?
Exactly.
That's fun too, yeah. And you don't get to really, step out there and be like, "Listen, I didn't do this."
I
This
know. I
wasn't
wanted
me."
to respond. I was like, look, I wanted to respond and be like, look, I told them, don't engage.
Well, with that in mind, I think with something like Yellowjackets, Jen, is that something that you have to consider as well when, when people watch that show, they're looking for hints and clues and trying to put puzzle pieces together. And, whether it's the end credits or other songs in the episode, they might be looking at those lyrics or, something about the band to tip them off to something that's coming or an extra meaning or a deeper level. Is that a conversation you have to have with the writers, like with the showrunners, or is that just too deep out there for you to worry about?
I love reading what they thought went into putting the song in. It's like, oh yeah, God. Wow, I did that. No, I not really. I think at the end of the day, for us, it's so much about the song and how the song functions in the scene. And if it is a wink and a nod, and whether that's intentional or not, it does all kind of come back to the song itself. But no, I didn't. And when I was offering 5 options for this and that, I didn't think about that, but if people want to think I'm that smart.
Do you mean like Easter egg type uses? I find a lot of Easter eggs are planted by the writers because they just know the story so deeply. It's so hard for me to like say, oh, like here, we're gonna have the whole egg theme coming up later in the season, so let's do a song about eggs early in the show. That wasn't my idea.
I mean, you did do it though. Like you have. I mean, it did happen. So that was
It
great.
happened, but it wasn't, necessarily.
Yeah, that was. I believe that was Damon who wanted that. Who made sure that was considered. Okay, so Jen, I also wanted to ask just how much does the process change in terms of clearances, in terms of getting music when you're using a song that is, unrelated to the show or unrelated to people who work on the show versus like in Euphoria when you're working on a song from Labyrinth when he's like actually working on Euphoria and then you're going to use his song at the end of episode 2, I think, or episode 3 was a Labyrinth song. Yeah. How much does the process change with that? Like, I would assume it would be easier because he's there to get that song, to use a Labyrinth song, but I don't know.
Well, Labyrinth is our composer. Yeah. So everything that he does, he's just constantly creating music, sometimes to picture, sometimes not, just constantly feeding our editors music. And Yeah, I Fucking Did It was one of the songs. And, we just kind of got it and we're like, this is amazing. Let's use it everywhere. No, we used it in the end credits. And then I think we used a lot of the stems in 5, the Rue Run episode. But then we had in 4, I'm Tired. And that was something, Labyrinth had this season, he had a studio on set. So, and that was like the cool place to hang out. So everybody would go there, which made it a nightmare when found out that Zendaya wrote some of the song. So it's just, it's just part of the creative process. And then we get this amazing song that we get to use. And, same thing with Elliot's song, like they just went in and were kind of hanging out. And then this song was created. And then, the editors got it and we just put it in. So it's just a constant creating and feeding music.
Is that exciting? Like, does that?
Yeah.
Okay, like that's
Oh,
a
yeah, it's
satisfying part of
amazing
it for you
to-
to like be able to. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, when we get, a new Labyrinth song, we're a new batch of music. It's very exciting to see what he did. And, with I'm Tired, when we finally got that, Like I think I got it on my phone, and I was just like, listening to it as soon as it came in my inbox. So hearing what he's doing is fantastic.
Yeah, my favorite part of the job, I think, is working with composers and being in the studio with them and talking. I love that so much, the creation part, and then creating originals or doing covers for anything that's creation is my favorite part. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something that doesn't go acknowledged enough, really, because that is a big part of your job, or it can be a big part of your job to create music, where it's needed. And is that typically a situation where, it's filling a gap, like it's filling a need, or is that something that's written into the script and they say, listen, we need a song here, can you come up with something, or is it something you pitch? Like, how does the creation element usually come in when it's something that you're kind of building or orchestrating on your own?
I think it's all of the above and then more. It just depends. There's a new show on Apple Plus TV called Shining Girls, where we end
that
it with
show.
I love this show so much. And the ending, we have Angel Olsen does a cover of one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs. And it's a beautiful cover. I was really proud of that. But it came because it's a very complicated and challenging show to watch, and you don't really fully understand everything that's going on. And at the end, the network wanted a voiceover. They wanted Elizabeth Moss to sort of sum up the show with a voiceover, and she flat out refused to do it. And I applaud her for it because that's what she does in *Handmaid's Tale*. And it was already like drawing comparisons to *Handmaid's* because she's a survivor. So she was like, I'm not going to do a voiceover. And so the next thing was like, well, then find a song that will sum up the entire show. And I was like, I'm not gonna be able to just find. So we talked about doing original, and then I suggested cover, and it grew from there. But yeah, it depends. But that was my most recent memory of how that happened.
Find a song that will sum up the entire show. Perfect.
It's a like sci-fi thriller revenge show
No problem. Well, and I want to get to audience questions. We're going to get to that in just a second. So if you have questions ready, just raise your hand, and I'll get a microphone to you. But right before we do that, you're up first. Liza, I did want to ask with Station 11. It's such a tricky tonal show because it is, kind of superficially an apocalyptic, darker story, but it is hopeful. Like, and that hope is integrated into it. I love the closing song. I love the Sonny and Cher, United We Stand as a closer. But was there anything? Yeah. But was there anything that you used to kind of steer yourself in the right direction with that? Like, how do you kind of keep the tone as needed throughout a series like that, where they are purposefully trying to kind of upend expectations a little bit with what the genre is? Like, was there anything you used as a guidepost, or
Don't know.
just a lot of conversations with Patrick?
Yeah, just a lot of collaboration. I mean, he's the guy with the tone, and so I just follow his lead. I compare Station 11, Leftovers, Watchmen. They're kind of in the same DNA in that they're all very eclectic, and they're all scene by scene in terms of song choices. It's not like Narcos, which is a certain thing, like or Parenthood or something, which is like a very specific thing. But still, the tone has to survive and be there. And I just think you take your musical cues literally from what you're seeing. The level of irony, the level of humor. Is it black and white humor, or is it complex? And I feel like songs are that way, that they should, if you're working on a very mainstream show, then the songs should feel that way too, so whatever. I feel like I try to take music, song ideas, just try them against picture, and just, it depends on what's going on. So many things, the color of the photography, the choices of the casting choices, how adventurous, just so many different cues.
No, that makes perfect sense, and I think that grouping also makes a lot of sense in terms of like how they hold together and the tonal both balance and imbalance. But all right, I've talked enough. Let's get to your questions. I think we had a very eager person right here. Let me find the microphone first. Oh, you've got it? Okay, great. Yeah.
Earlier, y'all were talking about obtaining rights to certain songs for going into a series. What happens if you find a song that you love and the band doesn't exist anymore, the label doesn't exist anymore? How do you get the rights to that song? Like, what kind of avenues do you go through to try to achieve getting that one song?
I mean, we do by any means necessary. Like, I mean, social media, you stalk, like, you find people through Facebook or Instagram or, yeah.
Even though a band is, no longer together,
Someone owns it.
there's plenty of ways to find them.
Like an indie, say a lot of indie bands kind of just fold because they don't get that big. And I'm sorry for double barreling this, but say that band does fold and the label goes under, and you try to find someone.
So you find the band member on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, or get a subscription to whitepages.com, or find, which I do, and you just figure
Call
out.
a funeral parlor
Yep,
for their records.
obituaries.
Yes,
Yep.
whatever.
And you'll find them. I mean, yeah, it's, you go onto Google, you're on Google page 5 and 6 and 7. You don't just stop at page 1.
Again, because we don't want to tell filmmakers no. Like, yeah.
Add detective to the list of things that you guys do. All right, you've got the mic. Let's go over here. I'm sorry, I made sure that you were going to get your question answered. You were so eager, so ready. I believe it. I believe it.
I'm wondering about the trend that happens every once in a while where one song is on every show. And I have a very particular example because it has bothered me for 15 years. It is Young Folks by Peter, Bjorn, and John. And I know it was on, I just looked it up. It was on 12 shows in about 2006 to 2008. And it was it opened Gossip Girl and it was on Grey's Anatomy. And I don't expect you to know that song or anything in particular. I'm just wondering about why does every show want the same song that most people it comes out of nowhere and most people have never heard of it?
Well, that's a little harsh. I don't think everybody wants that song. I think it's just, it happens. Again, it's coming from the showrunner. I know that's not I don't ever want to sync that song. There's definitely songs that I'm I don't want to touch that one. Your Kate Bush in Handmaid's Tale. I will never, I love that song.
I pitched
but-
Running Up the Devil for the end, and then it became This Woman's Work Under the Hanging Sea.
This one,
And I know people had issues with it, which I understood.
What did they
Oh, you don't want to touch it because I
it's
used
so
it.
beautiful.
Oh,
It's such
thanks.
there's
I had a lot of trouble with. I had trouble with the use because I thought it was problematic. We don't have to talk about that. But there are some songs that I will never touch.
Yeah.
But you and I just had a song that everyone was talking about.
the Katy
The Katy
Perry's.
Perry. And I think it's because we were just both doing period from
I
that.
mean,
and it's like zeitgeist. I had no clue until I watched your show that
Same,
you had
until
used it.
people were there was 2 different Katy Perry songs. We had Roar, but
No, we had Roar.
no,
Didn't
then
we?
I had Roar. No, because
It was Roar, an episode. Did you? Yeah. The dropout was Roar. Yeah.
what did I have in We Crashed? Oh God, I can't.
Wasn't it Roar? I thought it was
You
Roar.
did, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
it was Roar.
But there were also big moments. You had the score played it.
We had that was actually factually true that Adam Newman would come into WeWork and they would have to blast Katy Perry. So Roar. So that's kind of that was in the script from day one. But
And then Katy Perry's in my script too.
But it's period. I don't know that we don't know what everybody's working on.
That's the thing. Is
but-
you have no clue until it comes out. What's
I remember when that song came out, and I used it probably at least 4 of those 12. But it wasn't intentional, and sometimes we get a lot of songs pitched to us, and I feel what year was that?
In 2006.
Okay,
2008.
so I remember that was kind of a big sync push. Where people are going, oh, this is the only way to make money, and the music industry is syncs. There's no more CD sales, and the music industry is dying, which of course we all know it isn't. But so we got to get syncs, and so they're pushing syncs. But here's a super syncable song. That song it worked with a lot of different types of scenes, So it got used a lot. So let's say I'm working on 2 or 3, 4 shows. And, oh, that's my new favorite song, and I'm pitching it. across the board. I don't expect it to land in more than one opportunity, but sure enough, there it is in 2 shows. It's very frustrating, but it just happens. I think it's a coincidence, but it's also there's certain songs that just show up everywhere.
Yeah. Like there was a year, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 years ago that every single showrunner wanted to put Billie Eilish in. I mean, but it was right before she blew up, and they thought they were so cool. Yes. And I was like, every single fucking person is putting that song. But do you ever pitch the same song for like multiple shows, and then if I tell them, I'm like, oh,
Try
that
not to,
just
but
got
I
into
do.
yeah.
I do, especially if it's in my little secret weapon folder, and then like nobody's bought it for like years, and I suddenly get 2 things on it. I'm like, weird.
Yeah.
Well, as a critic, I will say the Leftovers theme comes up in so many shows, especially in temp tracks, and it feels so manipulative. Like it just.
Do you mean the score?
Yeah,
You
the
mean
score.
The Max
yeah,
Richter,
yeah. I mean,
the
that does
theme.
too. That does too.
It
But
gets-
the score, yeah, Max
And
Richter.
same with Social Network.
Yeah. Yep.
Score
And
you
John
know.
Bryan. I mean,
Yeah, there's a lot of scores. That
Some of
get
it's
temp.
just like the tone is just so evocative that you
Machina
hit
gets
it.
used,
We're gonna go right behind because you've been pretty eager as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to move the runner around too much.
Thank you all. You guys have talked a lot about the struggles that sometimes exist when you're trying to get a song, but I'm also curious, have you ever had artists that are such big fans of a particular project that they lobby you to try and get their music in?
I do get a lot of artists for approaching me for Euphoria.
Names.
I get a lot of people for Handmaids, or I used to.
All right, let's go to the back row right there. Yeah.
First of all, I wanted to say it's amazing to see 3 incredibly talented women in front of us. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise. This is sort of a general question. I'd be very interested to know what your musical background is. Do you play musical instruments? And how, when you read a script, how do you approach musicality and the rhythm and the beats of the script? Was it something you learnt or were you taught?
I'm not a musician. I'm not very musical. I'm tone deaf. I have a background in visual art and painting, but I've been a fan my whole life. When I read, it's about the story. It's about the characters. I attack each project with a character playlist. That's how I start. And then it's just instinct, what works. I think Liza said we throw up so many different songs, and then it just becomes like what you have to watch it to picture to see what happens and see if magic is made. So I don't know. Do you guys have a music background?
No, I got my start as a music publicist. Okay. I did PR for rock bands for years before I decided I wanted to do this.
I sort of do. I mean, I went to Interlochen music camp when I was a kid. I have a musical theater background, acting. I have a degree in acting, and then I started DJing. So for me, I DJ'd for like 35 years or something. So that was kind of trying to figure out how to make a living out of my passion, which is DJing. And then finding music supervision and evolving from, super creative job to business and running a business and running my team. And then just to your question about how do you decide or whatever, for me and the group of wonderful people that work with me, I just always tell them, and I try to do this too, just instinct, but like just be judgy, like be mean to songs. Like don't be nice. Don't think, oh, this song is, I don't love it, but it's got this cool flute or whatever. If you don't like it, you don't like it, and nobody else is gonna probably like it. Like you have to just like be discriminating when it comes to songs.
And have an opinion, speak your opinion, speak up. It took me a while to figure that out.
Yeah,
like, and
then after a while you go like, yeah, no, yes, no.
It's
a lot easier when you trust yourself.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, you're just trying to you're trying to figure out what you like, It takes a while.
I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Let's just go straight up here.
Hi. Can you hear me? I have a really specific question for Jen. With Euphoria, love the show, and I love the music on the show. One thing that has always stood out to me is the fact that, you know, they're teenagers in 2020, 21, 22, but a lot of the music, a lot of the hip hop is late 90s, early 2000s, which is my era, so I love it. But it's always interesting to me that that is kind of a very dominating kind of genre or dominating time period. So just wondering if you could talk about that. Let's just kind of the creative decision behind that.
It's a good question. I definitely got dragged on Twitter for that. But they're amazing songs. They're timeless songs. Why wouldn't kids be listening to that music now? Why is that so like foreign to people, or like unbelievable? Like they wouldn't be listening to this. It's like, okay, A, how do you know? And B, why not? Like, why wouldn't they? I mean, they're timeless songs in the same way that, you know, I'm sure we've all had to license, you know, like Bob Dylan songs and other songs that are timeless that might not be in the same time period, or that they're just dope songs that we wanted to put in the show and not have, you know. I think music today also, like I think a lot of music is we're missing those bangers. To your point. Like we're missing it. Like where is the some of those songs
I'm
today?
personally a fan of trap music and drill, but I have so much trouble getting anyone to put it in any scenes.
I think it's also like, you know, when we did season 1 of Euphoria, we had a whole party episode. And it was like, if we had contemporary like trap shit throughout the whole thing, it would become white noise and it would become annoying, and it wouldn't it just wouldn't matter. And every song choice that we put in Euphoria and in all of our shows, it's very intentional. And there's a reason why it's there. And if it just becomes, again, like just nothing in the background, then why even do it? So I just think it's, you know, I think that it was something that I was like, well, why not? Why? And also it's now there's a whole new generation of kids that are going to be listening to Tupac. So, and it's either like, that's a good thing, I think, because I got some very interesting DMs about why that's a bad thing. And I'm like, okay, so if you're 16, you shouldn't be listening to Tupac, or you can't, or, you know, he and his estate and his family wouldn't want that legacy to live on.
Listen, Twitter's great. There's only good people on Twitter, so let's just keep that in mind.
Not on Twitter.
We have to wrap. Does anybody have a very quick question over there? Maybe a quick. Pressure's on.
Just Maggie, you were saying about character playlists. Do you come up with a playlist for each character in a piece?
Yeah, each main character, like based on where they were born, when they were where they were born, when they were born, what they go on their journey. Yeah.
And about how many songs would it be per
10 to 100. It depends. That's my fun. I mean, that's the beginning part of it, and then I pull from that for the rest of the season. So.
Do you give those to the actors? Do you
Yeah.
share those? That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Please give a hand. Maggie Phillips, Jen Malone, Liza Richardson. Wonderful people. Wonderful things.